Ah! Someone, please come quickly. A sudden scream echoed through the cabin of the plane as it approached landing. What's going on? The passengers murmured in alarm as a flight attendant raised her voice. Is there a doctor on board? Yes, I'm here. The one who responded and raised his hand. Was me, a doctor on the verge of losing my job due to my boss's scheme. This is bad. As I checked the condition of the ill passenger, I realized it was a critical emergency. Without hesitation, I began administering emergency treatment. However, I'm sorry, but this person is already. One doctor after another began voicing their resignation. Even so, I refused to give up. I will save you. Please, come back. Pouring every ounce of my will into my actions, I kept my hands moving. And this decision would soon send shockwaves through my life. Mickey Oaks, correct? May we have a word with you? 2 detectives had come to the airport to take me in. My name is Mickey Oaks, 35 years old. I'm a neurosurgeon at a major hospital in New York City. Every day, I dedicate myself to saving as many patients as possible from illness and injury. And I thought that life would continue as it always had. Mickey, why don't you take some time off? One day, I was suddenly called into the director's office. Waiting for me there was my boss, the head of surgery, Mitchell, and his father, Mr. Cage, the hospital director. Take time off. Not understanding, I tilted my head in confusion. Mitchell let out a scoffing laugh. You don't get it? Fine, I'll spell it out for you. We don't want you coming to the hospital for a while. What? Stunned, I instinctively looked to Mr. Cage for help. But he kept his eyes on the documents on his desk, as if he hadn't heard a word of our conversation. There's no way he didn't know how much I had dedicated myself to my patients and the hospital. Of course, my father has already agreed. You've been doing back-to-back surgeries lately, haven't you? Just take this as a chance to rest up. But what about my patients? The surgeries I have scheduled. Mitchell's expression suddenly darkened. You think the department can't function without you? Don't get cocky. You're just a regular doctor, nothing more. Just because people call you a genius surgeon. I fell silent. A genius surgeon. That was a title I had earned through relentless effort. I had successfully performed numerous difficult surgeries and saved patients that others had given up on. As a result, patients from far and wide came to me, saying, Dr. Oaks is our only hope. Rumors even circulated in the hospital that I might skip the position of head surgeon and go straight to becoming the next hospital director. And the one who despised me for it, because he had always believed he was the rightful successor, was Mitchell. I've had enough of that attitude of yours. Take this as a chance to reflect. You've been spoiled with that genius label and become insufferably arrogant. Seizing the opportunity, Mitchell lashed out at me, his eyes burning with hostility. At that moment, Mr. Cage finally spoke. That's enough, Mitchell. You're being disgraceful. Father. I'm sorry. Mickey, do you truly have no idea why this is happening? Mr. Cage raised his gaze and fixed me with a stern look. Caught off guard, I hesitated, then slowly shook my head. I finally learned the reason I was being driven out of the hospital. Your brother. What? You have a younger brother, don't you? A young man I've often seen walking near the hospital with you. His name, if I recall correctly, is Danny? Why? Why was Danny's name coming up here? The question was so shocking that I couldn't even put it into words. As I stood there, dumbfounded, Mr. Cage delivered an even harsher truth. We've received complaints from patients and people in the neighborhood. They say a doctor working at this hospital was seen walking around with a rough-looking man who resembled a mafia member. Some have even started questioning whether this hospital has ties to criminal organizations. No, wait, please, my brother is. Until this blows over, we need you to stay away from the hospital. You have a mafia-affiliated brother who keeps showing up here. You'll be a nuisance. That final statement hit me like a blow to the head. Beside Mr. Cage, Mitchell grinned, looking smug. I could tell he was saying something to mock me, but I was too overwhelmed to process it. The only thought that consumed my mind was, I can never let Danny find out about this. Get me a drink. Now, you useless brat. My childhood was filled with my father's drunken yelling. After losing my mother right after she gave birth to Danny, my father drowned himself in alcohol. Of course, he couldn't hold a job for long, and we were always dirt poor. If only you weren't here. It's your fault we're miserable, you damn curse. Stop it. Danny did nothing wrong. Come on, let's go outside, Danny. Mickey. Whenever my father lashed out at my little brother, I was the one who protected him. We received some government support, but I took on all the household chores, worked part-time to support our family, and studied until dawn every day. I never made friends, I was too focused on escaping poverty. And because I had a dream. A doctor? You think you can become a doctor? Ha! Don't be stupid. I will. I will become a doctor. And I'll save people like Mom. No matter how much my father mocked me or how often people laughed, saying, a poor kid like you could never be a doctor. I never gave up. Eventually, my academic performance earned me a full scholarship to medical school. Between my grueling studies, I worked multiple jobs to cover my living expenses and send money home. Whenever I visited, exhausted beyond belief, Danny would always say, one day, I'll take care of you, Mickey. I'll work my ass off, save up a ton of money, and build you a massive house. Ha ha. I'll be looking forward to that. But you'll have to study harder first. Ugh. I hate studying. Ha ha. Even though I had left him behind with our abusive father, Danny was always waiting for me with a smile. He wasn't the best at studying, but he was incredibly athletic and had a bright, energetic personality. After finally becoming a doctor despite all the hardships, my next goal was to help Danny grow into a respectable adult. And yet, hey, where do you think you're going? A firm grip on my shoulder snapped me back to reality. I barely remembered finishing my shift and heading toward the hospital exit. My mind had been so clouded that I hadn't even noticed bumping into someone until they called me out on it. What the hell, man? Watch where you're walking. A tall, broad-shouldered young man with a muscular build loomed over me, narrowing his sharp, piercing eyes like a blade. Dressed in a sleek, expensive suit, with a luxury watch peeking from his sleeve, one that could easily buy a high-end car. You're always decked out like you're ready for battle. If I had said that to an actual mafia member, I probably would have been punched on the spot. But instead, the man in front of me grinned. Unlike you, Mickey, I actually work out. Makes me look good, huh? Saying that, the man, my younger brother, Danny, grabbed my work bag from me. Rough day, huh? You didn't even notice me standing here. Just how hard was your shift today? Yeah, sorry. I was just lost in thought. You have a mafia-affiliated brother who keeps showing up here, you'll be a nuisance. Mr. Cage's words resurfaced in my mind, fueling my anger all over again. Danny had an intimidating look, sure, but he wasn't in the mafia. Not even close. Danny was. You're working hard too. I muttered without thinking, and Danny must have picked up on something in my tone because his expression softened, his eyebrows drooping as he let out a small, wry smile. Someone said something about me, didn't they? What? Yeah, it figures. I'm always causing trouble for you, aren't I? Sorry, man. That's not. He's not the one at fault. But Danny just shook his head sadly. If you mess up once, people don't let you live it down. I'm really feeling that now. And well, I guess my looks don't help either. Your looks have nothing to do with it. You're a good person, Danny. Ha, thanks. That's why I respect you more than anyone, Mickey. I didn't say anything. How could someone who says things like that be a bad person? I wanted to drag Mr. Cage, Mitchell, and whoever filed that complaint to the hospital right now and make them hear this for themselves. Danny is a good guy. He just had a tough-looking face and got misunderstood a lot. And back in high school, he was just going through a rough patch. High school? Nah, I didn't go to that crap. What a joke. 10 years ago. When I rushed to the hospital after hearing that my father was in critical condition due to end-stage liver cancer, what I found wasn't just my dying father. It was my 17-year-old brother, Danny, his hair unkempt, flashy accessories dangling from his neck and wrists, his entire appearance giving off a careless, rebellious vibe as he spat out those words. You didn't go. But I sent you money for tuition. Ha? Oh, that? Yeah, I used it to buy a bike. And, to hang out with my buddies. You're kidding me. He wasn't even trying to look remorseful, I wasn't even angry, just completely drained. Of course, I should have seen this coming. A childhood in poverty. A father who did nothing but hurl insults. A personality too gentle to fight back when classmates mocked him. It had all built up inside Danny, and eventually, it exploded. I'm dropping out. But keep sending me money, alright? I'll use it to make up for that bastard old man. You idiot! Right there, beside our unconscious father, I punched Danny with everything I had. I had been cutting back on my own living expenses to make ends meet, thinking of my brother's future. But I couldn't forgive Danny not because my sacrifices had been wasted, but because he was throwing away his future. What the hell, Mickey? Why didn't you tell me? Ha? I'm asking why you didn't say anything before it got this bad. I knew Danny's character best. He is not the kind of guy who bothers people for no reason and thinks nothing of it. So, tell me everything. The hardships, the pain, everything you've been holding in. Mickey. And from now on, let's live together. We'll figure out your future together. He was speechless. Tears started streaming down Danny's face, unstoppable. Not long after that, our father passed away. Danny dropped out of high school and came to live with me. For now, I'll work part-time and pay you back for the tuition money. Then we'll figure out what's next together. I swear. I'll start taking life seriously. The embarrassed way he said it, that was the Danny I knew before he went off the rails. Man, today's sight was rough. My boss, Mr. Carden, was in a terrible mood. Danny laughed, scratching his suntanned cheek. 8 years ago, he started working at a construction site where Mr. Carden saw potential in him. He ended up getting hired as an apprentice carpenter. Now, he's a fully fledged carpenter who even manages job sites. We still live together, and on nights when I don't have a night shift, he waits for me outside the hospital. We'd walk home together, sharing stories about our day. That was our routine, but now, after next month's medical conference, you need to stay away from the hospital for a while. That was what they told me this afternoon. Even after explaining that Danny was just a carpenter, Mr. Cage and the others refused to listen. My suspension was already set in stone. Your birthday's coming up soon, huh? I've got a huge surprise planned. You're gonna be blown away. Unaware of anything, Danny beamed as he spoke. You were the only adult who ever really listened to me when I was a mess. You took care of me like a parent when we were kids. And you always protected me from Dad. I'll never forget that, you know? I might be dumb, but I remember the important stuff. Danny. That's why I want to pay you back from now on. Even if you ever lose your job, don't worry, I'll take care of you. I was speechless. His words caught me off guard, and I barely managed to keep my expression in check. Danny might be straightforward and a bit naive, but sometimes he was eerily perceptive. I quickly started walking ahead, so he wouldn't see my reaction. Isn't a surprise kind of ruined if you announce it beforehand? Ah, crap. Forget I said anything. I totally didn't plan anything yet. Yeah, got it. I could practically see him panicking behind me, and for the first time that day, I smiled a little. But deep down, I was drowning in anxiety. Mr. Cage and Mitchell were well connected, and their influence stretched across multiple hospitals. Even if I switched jobs, would I be able to keep working as a doctor? In the worst case, would I lose my career entirely? What do I do? I whispered the thought to myself, making sure Danny wouldn't hear. Time passed, and the day before my suspension finally arrived. After attending a medical conference in another city, I boarded a flight back to New York. No, back to reality was more accurate. I had never managed to tell Danny about my suspension. And the thought of facing him tonight weighed on me like a stone. If only something went wrong and this plane never landed. The thought was reckless, I knew, but it still crossed my mind. Meanwhile, the plane continued its steady course home. And then, less than an hour before landing, the cabin suddenly erupted into chaos. Ah! Somebody, help! Please! A scream rang out from the front of the economy class section. A flight attendant rushed over, calling out, "What happened?" as the passengers around us began murmuring in alarm. Is there some kind of trouble? Looks like it. I exchanged glances with the passenger next to me, then leaned into the aisle to get a better look toward the front. And then, is there a doctor on board? A young woman's voice rang out in desperation. The flight attendant who had rushed forward earlier was now scanning the cabin, calling out anxiously to the passengers. I'm a doctor. Almost reflexively, I raised my hand high. Then I'm a doctor too. Same here. One by one, hands shot up across the cabin. Surprised, I looked around more carefully and recognized the faces immediately. They were doctors who had attended the same medical conference just hours ago. By sheer coincidence, we were all on the same flight. So many of you. The flight attendant seemed momentarily stunned. I stepped forward, speaking on behalf of the group. What happened? Well, just come quickly. Before I could ask further, she grabbed my arm and pulled me into the commotion. And what I saw was, this is bad. The words slipped from my mouth instinctively. The situation was critical. Sir, can you hear me? I patted his shoulder and called out at close range, but there was no response. The unconscious passenger, a middle-aged man in a suit, was completely unresponsive. His face was pale as a sheet, and his dress shirt was drenched in sweat. He suddenly clutched his chest like he was in pain. And then, he just lost consciousness. Hearing the accounts from the passengers around him, I immediately suspected a diagnosis. Cardiac surgery wasn't my specialty, but I had studied the basics in medical school. And I had seen enough patients in this exact condition at the hospital. This man was likely to be. Everyone, help me lay him down in the aisle. Also, where's his bag? Here. This one. The flight attendant hastily handed me a small handbag. I rummaged through it, and sure enough, I found a case of pills. Who here specializes in cardiac surgery? Me. One of the doctors stepped forward. I handed over the medication for confirmation. As expected, the man had a history of heart disease. With the help of the surrounding passengers, we carefully moved him into the aisle. I checked his breathing and pulse. Neither are detectable. We're starting CPR immediately. CPR. There's an AED on board, right? Get it, now. Yes. The flight attendant, still pale with shock, ran toward the back of the cabin. In the meantime, I started chest compressions immediately. The other doctors joined in, taking turns performing rescue breaths and compressions. Come on, come back. I've got the AED. Good. Everyone, step back." The flight attendant hurriedly handed over the AED, and I quickly placed the pads on the man's chest before delivering a shock. But his heart didn't restart. "Come on, move, please." I continued alternating between rescue breaths, chest compressions, and AED shocks. But still, his heart wouldn't start. I pressed down on his chest with even more force, refusing to let go. And then, someone grabbed my shoulder from behind. "I'm sorry, but this person is all ready." It was the cardiac surgeon who had identified himself earlier. As a specialist, he he understood the reality of the situation. This man couldn't be saved. The time limit hasn't passed yet. If we give up now, he definitely won't survive. I looked around at the other doctors, pleading with them. But one by one, they all shook their heads with heavy expressions. "No way. We've done everything possible. You know that. Damn it." Watching a life slip away before my eyes, powerless to stop it, is the most painful part of being a doctor. No doctor can save every life. Even as someone labeled a genius neurosurgeon, I've lost more patients than I can count. But that's exactly why. I can still save him. I will save him. Ignoring everyone else, I resumed CPR on my own. I had no idea how many rounds of chest compressions and AED shocks I'd performed. My arms felt numb, and then, it's beating. With a faint thump, the man's heart started to beat again. Weak, but steady. His breathing followed soon after, and I collapsed onto the aisle in relief. Thank God. He survived. And then, the dead silence in the cabin broke into a loud cheer. He's okay. Oh my God, that's amazing. Well done. Passengers burst into applause. The other doctors patted my shoulder, smiling with relief. Yeah, thank God. A wave of exhaustion hit me like a truck. I couldn't even stand anymore. But for the first time in a long while, I was smiling. I was reminded, once again, why I became a doctor. Shortly after the man's revival, the plane landed safely at the airport. Paramedics were already waiting, and he was rushed to the hospital. The other doctors dispersed, and I finally took a breath in the terminal. That's when a woman approached me. Excuse me. Are you Dr. Oakes? Huh? How do you know my name? Confused, I confirmed my identity. The woman smiled a radiant, almost breathtaking smile. One of the other doctors told me. They said you're a very famous neurosurgeon, known by anyone in the medical field. And you are. Now that I looked more closely, I noticed she was wearing a flight attendant's uniform. Sharp, striking features. Long, slender limbs. She looked to be in her early 20s. I hadn't paid any attention before, but... Wait, were you the flight attendant from earlier? Yes. Thank you so much for earlier. With a grace so mesmerizing it was hard to look away, she bowed politely toward me. Then, lifting her head again, she smiled just as dazzling as before. My name is Lena. Thanks to you, I think I can keep doing this job. Huh? Really, thank you. At that moment, I had no idea that while I was saving a man's life, I had also saved a woman's heart. Up until about an hour ago, I was ready to quit being a flight attendant. Lena spoke while gazing out at the runway below. She had dreamed of this job since she was a child. Just last year, she finally made the dream come true and started working with high hopes. But the reality was harsh. She kept making mistakes and getting scolded by senior flight attendants. Eventually, someone even told her, "You're just not cut out for this." It felt like my whole world was crumbling. But then I thought, if I give up on this dream, what's left for me? I understand that feeling. I had thought about giving up many times myself. Even after all the struggles to become a doctor, I had hit countless walls and thought, I can't do this anymore. But the reason I kept going. I saw you, Dr. Oakes. Even when the other doctors gave up, you didn't. You were the only one who kept trying to save that passenger. And in the end, you did save him. Seeing that gave me so much courage. It made me believe that if I don't give up, maybe I can become a real flight attendant someday. Me too. Ha! I have a younger brother. And that guy, he never gives up. No matter what people say, he never backs down. When I think of him, I know I can't be the one to give up. People judged him for being a former delinquent, for dropping out of high school. He got fired from part-time jobs over and over. Even when Mr. Carden yelled at him, even when he told him, just quit already. Danny never lost his way. He never gave up on his dream of becoming a carpenter. And watching him fight for his future gave me the strength to keep fighting for mine. You have an amazing brother. Lena's words made me nod firmly. And in that moment, I made up my mind. When I got home, I would tell Danny everything. And no matter what happened, I would never give up being a doctor. Thank you, Lena. Ha! I'm really glad we talked. I'm glad I was on your flight. Please, don't give up on your dream either. I turned away, feeling lighter, and started walking toward the exit. At that time. Wait! The sound of heels clicking quickly behind me. Lena stepped in front of me, extending her hand. This. If you don't mind, would you take it? What is this? My contact information, if you don't mind. Ha! My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid she could hear it. This was the first time in my life a woman had ever given me her number. And from someone I had just met today. I want to get to know you better, Dr. Oakes. Her face turned bright red as she struggled to get the words out. But before she could finish, Mickey Oakes? A male voice called my name, so I turned around. And standing behind me were two men in suits. Yes, that's me. And you are? Would you mind coming with us for a moment? We need to ask you some questions. What? What the men took out of their pockets was a police badge. They identified themselves as detectives and told me they were waiting for me to arrive. To hear about a case. Wait. Before I could even process what was happening, Lena jumped between us. As if shielding me, she spread her arms wide, blocking the detective's path. Dr. Oakes isn't the kind of person to commit a crime. You must have the wrong person. Lena. I saw it with my own eyes. He was the only one who never gave up. He fought so hard to save that man. There's no way he's a bad person. I believe in him. Calm down, miss. It's okay. The younger detective gently reassured her, coaxing her to lower her arms. The older detective, his expression stern, looked me straight in the eye. Please listen carefully. And then, he told me something so shocking, I could barely comprehend it. It's not you. The suspect in the case is your brother. What? Danny is currently in our custody. We need you to come with us to the police station. I don't remember how I left the airport. Before I knew it, I was in a car, sitting beside the older detective as he explained everything. Your brother has been stealing cash from the hospital where you work. Have you noticed any unusual behavior from him lately? What? That's impossible. Danny would never steal. Think carefully. Has he suddenly had more money? Bought anything expensive? You live together, don't you? It was as if they were asserting that Danny was the culprit. I was in a state of great shock, yet I found myself inwardly thinking, maybe. I've got a huge surprise planned for your birthday. You're gonna be blown away. Had Danny used stolen money to buy my birthday present? No, that can't be. I wanted to believe in him. But deep inside, a sliver of doubt crept in. And I hated myself for it. We arrived at a police station near the hospital. The moment Danny saw me, he nearly broke down in tears. "Mickey, you gotta believe me, I didn't do anything. What is going on here? Why is my brother being treated like this?" The second I saw him, a wave of anger surged through me. His t-shirt was dirty and torn at the collar. Fresh cuts marked his cheek, still bleeding slightly. And the room we were in, several large officers stood watch, as if Danny were some dangerous criminal. He resisted arrest, we had no choice but to subdue him. "That's a lie," Danny shouted. "I wasn't trying to run. I was just looking for." "Looking for what? What were you trying to do, Danny?" "I was looking for the guy who set me up. He told me if I helped out, you wouldn't lose your job." "What?" Tears streamed down Danny's face as he pleaded, I had been tricked. As Danny was walking near the hospital one day, a man approached him. That man told him something shocking, that I might be getting fired. "Someone saw you hanging around this place, and they filed a complaint. They're saying that Dr. Oakes has ties to the mafia." Then, the man made Danny an offer. If Danny helped him out for a while, he would use his connections to make the complaint disappear. All I had to do was grab an envelope from a table in a specific room. He said that was it, and then everything would be fine for you. I thought it was just some letter or something. I never imagined there'd be money inside. Danny's movements going in and out of that room had been recorded on security cameras. To the police, that was enough proof. They were treating him like the prime suspect. Is that really all there is to it? What, Mickey? Do you have any proof that you were tricked? Did you sign any kind of contract with this guy? No. He just told me everything verbally. Wait, you think I did it too? Then what the hell have you been doing this past month? For the past month, I had barely seen him. He never picked me up from work. He'd leave early in the morning, come home late at night. And if, during that time, he had actually been stealing from the hospital, I wouldn't be able to provide him with an alibi. The big surprise you were talking about. Was it bought with stolen money? No. It's not. Then where were you? What have you been doing? I can't say. I won't. Danny looked me dead in the eye, his voice unwavering. And from that moment on, no matter what I asked, he wouldn't say another word. With no other option, the police officially took him into custody. Danny. My footsteps felt like lead as I left the police station. Danny's desperate voice still echoed in my head, "Mickey, believe me." And the thought of him sitting alone in his cell, wondering if his own brother had doubted him, was unbearable. I'm sorry for being such a weak brother. At that moment, I heard the crinkle of paper from my pocket. I reached inside and pulled out something I had completely forgotten about. The small note with Lena's contact information. Right. Her words echoed in my mind. I believe in you. A woman I just met trusted me without hesitation. So then. Believe, huh? Yes. No matter what happens, I will believe in Danny. The moment I made that decision, a strange feeling washed over me. The next day, Mitchell called me into a conference room, a smug grin plastered across his face. Well, Mickey. What a mess you're in. I bet you never imagined your own brother would turn out to be a thief and stealing in broad daylight. No less. Mitchell. You set him up, didn't you? Oh. What are you talking about? His words feigned innocence, but his smirk only deepened. Only 3 people knew about the complaint against Danny, me, Mr. Cage, and Mitchell. And only one of those people had been actively trying to get me fired. Last night, I had thought long and hard. And every possibility led back to one name. Well, it doesn't really matter now. Your criminal of a brother just made sure your career is over. Even after your suspension. Do you really think you'll be able to keep working here? Not just here, anywhere. My father and I have connections. It wouldn't take much to make sure every hospital in this region blacklists you. Who knows, maybe a little rumor will start going around. Maybe people will start thinking you were in on it and that you and your brother were working together. Get it now, Mickey? You're never going to be a doctor again. And then, his excitement boiling over, Mitchell finally said it, a line he should never have crossed. So, your brother was a delinquent, wasn't he? Guess once you stray from the right path, you stay trash forever. A real waste of space, society's garbage. Mitchell. His words were so vile, so unforgivable, that rage threatened to consume me. But I didn't let it. Because I believe in my brother. What? I believe that he was nothing more than a victim, tricked by a coward. That he is not trash, not garbage, but a man who has turned his life around and is living with integrity. I believe in him. So I will never believe you. You little. Who the hell are you calling a coward? Ha! You've got guts, I'll give you that. But do you really think a no-name ex-delinquent stands a chance against me, a department head at a major hospital? I don't care what anyone else thinks. I believe in the Danny I know. When I was in elementary school, he turned to my classmates in the neighborhood who ridiculed me as a poor skinny kid and said, "Don't bully my brother," and stood up to them. The Danny who, as a teenager, apologized to every person he had wronged. The Danny who, as an apprentice, never missed a single day of work. I remembered it all, every struggle, every step forward. No matter what anyone said, no one could erase those memories from me. That was why I believed in him. Mitchell. I can take any insult you throw at me. But he was in shock. I shot him a sharp glare. He flinched visibly. What I won't forgive is you dragging my brother into this. And I will make you admit his innocence. You? Ha! And how do you plan to do that? You don't have a shred of proof. You really think so? Of course. And I'm done playing around. Your giant brother is an eyesore, too. I'll make sure both of you disappear from society forever. Mitchell jabbed a finger at me, his voice dripping with venom. And in response, I simply held up a small memory stick. What's that? Unfortunately, this won't directly prove Danny's innocence, but it will be enough to drag you down from your little throne. And shake that social credibility of yours. What are you talking about? With a smile on his mouth, Mitchell's face turns pale in a flash. Apparently, he had a hunch about the contents of the memory stick. But I didn't care and said the words that Mitchell had expected. This is evidence. A record of all the corruption and misconduct you've covered up over the years. Mickey. Mitchell lunged at me, trying to snatch the drive from my hand. However, his aim was off, and he plunged into the table with such force that his upper body struck the table with such force that he fell to the floor and fainted in agony. Damn it. That was your fault. You dodged. I can hand it over if you want. But do you really think this is the only copy? What? For safety, I made backups. Where did I put them again? Oh well. Probably somewhere in the surgery department. The surgery department. Without thinking, Mitchell spun around and bolted for the exit. He yanked the door open and then froze. What the hell are you all doing here? His panic was justified. In front of the conference room where we were, there were many doctors and nurses who had heard the commotion. And they were all looking at Mitchell, who had jumped out of the room with a quizzical look. Something wrong, Mitchell? Nothing. All of you, move. Get out of my way. All of you? Move. Out of my way? Ah. It had taken years for Mitchell to craft his image, the calm, competent, respectable chief surgeon. He had hidden his true nature from everyone but me. But now, it was too late. The murmurs spread rapidly through the growing crowd outside the conference room. Mitchell's downfall was no longer something he could control. It's over. Finally realizing this, Mitchell gave up. His legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor, shoulders slumped in utter defeat. That same day, I went straight to Mr. Cage and laid out everything: Mitchell's embezzlement, the illegal reselling of hospital supplies, the under-the-table kickbacks from medical equipment manufacturers. The list went on and on. Even Mr. Cage, who had always protected his son, looked devastated. "Why would you do this, Mitchell?" I started gathering evidence the moment I first noticed the fraud. I knew that simply exposing it wouldn't be enough. You would have defended Mitchell, just like you believed that fake complaint about my brother. Mitchell confessed to everything, including setting Danny up. His goal was to eliminate me from the hospital entirely. By forcing me out, he would secure his position as the next hospital director. First, he used his father to put me on suspension. When that wasn't enough, he decided to destroy my reputation completely by labeling me the relative of a criminal. I was so focused on protecting the hospital, I never stopped to question anything. "I'm sorry, Mickey." Truly. Mr. Cage, clearly exhausted after a short period of time, exhaled deeply to me, looked me in the eye, and offered a sincere apology. Mitchell was to be fired immediately and disowned. And just as promised, a few days later, Mitchell was thrown out of both the hospital and his family with nothing. "I'm also canceling your suspension. If you're willing, I'd like you to return as the head of surgery. We need you here. I also heard about what you did on the flight, how you never gave up, even when everyone else had. You belong in this hospital." He meant it. But instead of answering, I placed my resignation letter on his desk. What? Why? I knew about Mitchell's fraud but didn't expose him sooner. I take responsibility for that. That was my official reason. The real reason was that I couldn't forgive him. Even after learning that Danny wasn't in the mafia, he never apologized to him. Not once. Oh no. Mr. Cage slumped in his chair, defeated. It was almost uncanny how similar his posture was to his son's. And with that, I turned my back on him, on the hospital, and walked away. My pace quickened because I had somewhere to be. Danny is waiting for me. I need to go pick him up. Danny was later proven innocent and released without incident. When Danny was let out of the detention center, he was crying at that point. His face scrunched up. I thought he must have had a very hard time in the detention center. "Thank you, Mickey, for believing in me." "Come on. You don't have to say it like that." I had to say it. I'd been waiting until I got out so I could tell you, thank you. Ha ha. You really are an idiot, Danny. I'm your brother. Of course I believe in you. And as I said those words, Danny bawled, thanking me over and over. And then, not long after, my birthday arrived. From the moment I woke up, Danny dragged me out of the house, taking me somewhere. "Where are we going?" "This is just a residential area." "Almost there." "You need to get outside more anyway." But no matter how far we walked, he kept saying, "Just a little more." Through the suburbs, up a long hill. By the time we reached the top, I was exhausted. I was about to start complaining, when Danny suddenly stopped. "We're here. This is what I wanted to show you." "What?" I looked in the direction he pointed, and my eyes widened. Standing there was a brand new one-story house. It wasn't big, but it had a modern, stylish design, with a neatly trimmed lawn surrounding it. It was exactly like. I once told you I wanted to live in a house like this, and it's exactly the way I imagined. Phew. So I got it right, huh? I was so nervous while building it, thinking, what if he doesn't like it? Building. Wait. You built this? I was speechless, and Danny just grinned. Surprise. Mission complete. He threw both fists into the air. It took me about 2 years. Mr. Carden and the guys at work helped out from time to time. But man, the last month was brutal, non-stop rain. Then I got arrested, and everything almost fell apart. But I made it just in time. Happy birthday, Mickey. The moment he said it, tears welled up in my eyes. You idiot. If I had known. If I told you, it wouldn't have been a surprise. You're so dumb, Mickey. Ha! Is this payback for my surprise the other day? I tried to keep my emotions in check, but no matter how hard I fought it, the tears welled up. The little brother who used to follow me around everywhere had grown into a skilled carpenter. And not just that, he had built a home just for me. This house is yours. I finally got to repay you a little. Idiot. A little? This is too much. I spent all my savings on it. But honestly, I've never felt like I spent my money better. You should have used it for yourself. You really are an idiot. I wanted to say it while laughing, but I couldn't. Because the tears wouldn't stop. Thank you, Danny. This is the best gift ever. No, thank you for everything. Woohoo! Ha ha. Watching him cry harder than me, I laughed through my own tears. Then, I turned to face the house again. No matter how I looked at it, it was the best house in the world. Because it was built with nothing but love. Not long after, I officially left my apartment to Danny and moved into my new home. I found a new job at a nearby hospital and returned to working as a neurosurgeon. Life started to settle into a steady rhythm until one evening after finishing my shift, I found someone unexpected waiting outside the hospital. It's been a while, Dr. Oakes. Do you remember me? Lena. Yes. It was Lena, who nodded very happily and had left me at the airport that day. Of course, she was not wearing a flight attendant uniform, but a white one-piece dress with a neat and clean look. Her makeup, more modest than that day, instead enhanced her original beauty. Such a dazzlingly beautiful woman suddenly appeared in front of me and ran up to me. I've always wanted to meet you, she said. Taking my hand and smiling at me. My heart rate increased so rapidly that I thought I was having a heart attack. You never contacted me. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I got caught up with everything. That's why I realized I shouldn't just wait. I heard from some colleagues that you started working here. I had to come see you. Why, though? Why? Her eyes swam as if she was embarrassed, and her cheeks were slightly tinted. She put more pressure on her hand that was holding mine. And Lena suddenly looked up and stared straight into my eyes. Because it was love at first sight. Because I fell in love with you when I saw you saving a life. What? Please marry me. What? This was the first proposal I ever received in my life. To be honest, I have no memory of how I responded at that moment. I was in such a panic that it completely slipped my mind, even now, 2 years later. It remains a secret I keep to myself. But there is one thing I remember clearly. This house is meant for a family, you know. So do your best, Mickey. For some reason, Danny's words suddenly resurfaced in my mind at that moment. Looking back now, maybe it was a prophecy. Because before long, I would be starting a new chapter in my life. In the best house in the world and with the woman I love most, who is now my family. Believing in someone takes a lot of courage. It means battling the fear of betrayal and the doubts that creep into your mind. But the people who choose to believe despite that, they are the strongest of all. I was lucky enough to meet such a person, and thanks to her, I found the strength to believe in my brother until the very end. Believing in someone can also mean saving their heart. That's why, as a doctor, I will always believe in my patients' recovery. At the same time, I will dedicate myself to earning their trust. With that promise in my heart, I will continue to save as many lives as I can.